So there's something about fall that always feels like a countdown for me. And for those of you that aren't from the US, when I talk about fall, I'm talking about autumn. And it's not just the leaves dropping or the colder air on your neck when you crack open the visor, but it's that sense that every ride could be your last big one before winter clamps down on everything. And here in Seattle, we're known for having pretty dodgy winters with snow and rain and all that stuff. But for me, that's kind of the ride for me. Seattle's already changing. The skies are lower, the mornings are quieter, the rain shows up uninvited. It's a place where the weather always seems to be wrong when you read it online and you actually go out and experience it. So when the forecast gave me one last window, one clear day, I knew exactly where I was going. The North Cascade Highway and mountain range here in Washington State. On the northwest side of the loop, skirting the edge of the North Cascades National Park out toward Lake Chelan, then back through Leavenworth and down into the city again. It's about a 500-mile ride in one push, and a final send-off, I suppose, on a bike that was built to carve roads like these. So riding out of Seattle early, the city feels like it's still dreaming. You pass the coffee shops just lighting up, couples walking their dogs, obviously in flannel shirts and beanies, kind of a Seattle thing. Headlights reflecting off the sort of a damp pavement. It's starting to become a reality that winter's almost here. But the further east you go, the more the landscape opens up and the more the ride begins. There's this moment every time where the city drops away behind you and the trees get taller. That's when I know I'm out. That's when I've left the noise, the deadlines, the inbox, all of it, and just the road and the cold air and this bike. The Turismo Veloce from Agusta. It's Italian, it's loud, it's fast, and it always seems to be ready to stretch its legs. This is what I needed. Sort of one last loop around the North Cascades before the snow gates close, before the season changes for real. So let's ride.
So what do we have here? This is my Agusta Turismo Veloce Lusso. I did a review of this bike, but it was the demo bike that my dealer had, and a lot of you told me that you really enjoyed it but wanted some more details on it. So here we are, kind of a quarter of the way into our fall or autumn season here in the US, and I filled her up with gas and it's time to take it out for a ride, and I'm headed towards those hills there and over into the North Cascade Highway here at Washington State, one of my favorite roads. Hopefully there's those still on the road and I haven't left it too late, so let's go find out.
Okay, so this is the Agusta Turismo Veloce Lusso SCS. A mouthful of a name for a bike that I think refuses to be simple, because on paper it's a middleweight sport tourer. In reality it's something closer to an Italian sport bike, I think, kind of wrapped in a touring suit but still wearing racing boots, if you know what I mean. Anyway. So at the heart of it is a 798 triple cylinder engine. It's the same core MV platform used in the Brutale and F3 lines, and it puts out around 110 horsepower at around 10,000 RPM and about 60 pound-foot of torque at around 7,000 RPM. So what that means is that it revs fast, sounds angry, and builds power in a very linear way. So it's not punchy like a twin, like my old African Twin, for example. It's not lazy like a cruiser. It climbs and climbs, and then it kind of howls at you once you cross the 8,000 RPM limit. And so if you're used to twins like the Multistrada V2S or bikes like that, the MV's top end will feel like a sport bike because it's basically what it is underneath. So I suppose as we're getting closer to the mountains, and the closer you get to altitude, the more performance is appreciated, frankly. And as you get less oxygen, the engine just behaves in a different way. But I can tell you that so far it's feeling just very approachable. It's absolutely very raw. The quick shifter is not a buttery smooth quick shifter. You can kind of feel the clunk of it. Certainly first and second gear, you can kind of feel that clunk as it finds its spot. It could be also that what's typical of a lot of Italian bikes is they take a while to kind of find their groove and break in. In terms of weight, it's just under, I think, 470 pounds dry, which puts it near the top of the middleweight class. But for me, it feels lighter in motion, and I think that's partly thanks to the chassis and partly, I suppose, because of the way this engine spins up. Now, the suspension is handled by fully adjustable Sachs units in front and rear, but it's electronically controlled on this model, the Lusso model. So you can tweak preload, rebound, and damping at the push of a button or through the app, whether you're solo, two-up, or loaded with gear. Now, I find this bike is interesting because I've owned a bunch of Multistradas. I've owned them for years, a lot of them, and it feels kind of like the Multistrada felt in the early days, almost super motardish. Like I feel like sometimes I forget that I'm on this middleweight bike, and I think that's really a good thing. So I suppose it's worth talking a little bit about the clutch. Now, this has the SCS clutch system, and for MV Agusta that stands for the Smart Clutch System, and MV partnered with Recluse to build it, and Recluse are a US company that made their name in dirt bike riding. What it means is you don't need to pull the clutch at all, ever, not even at a stop or start. It's weird at first, like you pull up to a red light and don't touch the clutch, which is weird, but it works seamlessly. You can still use the clutch lever if you want to, but you don't have to. Now, it's also paired with a bi-directional quick shifter, and that's where the bike gets a little, probably worth saying, dramatic. What I mean by that is the quick shift is aggressive, especially under light throttle, and it can feel pretty mechanical, even violent actually. And you really need to be pushing the bike for it to smooth out. So in those first few gears, it feels quite violent. Now remember, this is a 2023 model. This is their latest model, even though it's technically a 2023 model. Now compared to the Ducati butter smooth quick shifter on the Multistrada, this one's definitely more raw, and it's absolutely more raw than the MT-09 or the Tiger 800 and 900, frankly. Now, the Turismo Veloce has cruise control, has heated grips, adjustable traction control, multiple ride modes, ABS, a color TFT display, and a built-in GPS via the MV Ride app. I will say that the dash does feel a couple of years behind competitors in terms of its UX. The app though is actually really good. I would actually say the app is actually certainly better than the Ducati app, and I find it to be better than a lot of the other apps that I've used. And so, hats off to them on that. The fuel tank holds about 5.5 gallons, if I remember correctly, and the real world range that I've found on it sits between about 180 to 220 miles, depending on your wrist. So let's give it some beans through some of these canyon roads here and have a listen. Not sure how well this is coming through in the recording, but I always find it hard to get engine noise, but hopefully getting a decent sense for it. It's a lot of fun, super angry, and yeah, I mean, I'm definitely smiling underneath the helmet. Okay, so I suppose it's worth talking a little bit about what I call the triple threat and sort of the various three-cylinder engines out there. Now, triple-cylinder engines are kind of the oddballs of motorcycling, but I mean that in the best possible way. They sit between a parallel twin and an inline four. So you get the torque and low-end grunt of a twin, but the smoothiness and sort of a top-end pull of a four. And depending on how the engine's tuned, that balance can tilt very differently. Take the Tiger 900 for example. The motor's designed for mid-range usability and comfort. It's got a sort of a 1-3-2 firing order, and it's famous for its T-plane crank, which gives it that lumpy, almost twin-like feel down low, which is perfect for off-road traction or relaxed touring. It's smooth, yeah, but it doesn't rev out like a sport bike. Even the Triumph 800 Sport, Tiger 800 Sport doesn't. It's more about usable torque than sort of chasing the red line, I suppose. Now, you swing over to the MTO9 SP from Yamaha. Well, that's a triple, and it's a total hooligan. And I reviewed the MTO9 SP recently. And that engine, that CP3 engine, it's tuned for instant throttle response, and it's sort of a wheelie happy torque. It doesn't have much finesse though, and that's kind of the point. It's chaotic and it's a lot of fun, but after 200 miles, your wrists and back might ask for a break, even on a Tracer 9. Now, this is where the MV Agusta triple comes in, and this one feels completely different to me. It's more refined than the MTO9 engine or the CP3 engine. And it's definitely more aggressive than the Tiger 900 or 800. The 798 MV, it has this sort of clean, fast, and hard feel about it. So, as I said earlier, the power builds in a very linear way. It's not lumpy, it's not explosive, it's just smooth and climbing. But when you get past the 7,000 RPM, it just starts to scream. It definitely is not a twist and forget engine. It rewards you for revving it out. I'm feeling that right now here. And for keeping it in the upper third of the tack. So it's more like a race engine, I suppose, that got dressed up for touring duty. You could say the MV is a gentleman at low speeds and kind of a maniac at the top. It doesn't have the deep twin-cylinder rumble of some bikes, and it doesn't have the hooligan twitch of others, but what it does have is character and drama. It has a sense of precision and control, but believe it or not, actually also unpredictability once you crack it open. And of course the sound, I don't think anything other, no other triple I've ridden sounds like this. And it's hard to catch that on a mic here out in the twisties, but hopefully you get a sense. So yeah, triples are all over the map, but this one, the MV, I think it's the most exotic of the bunch. It's definitely the most emotional. Not the easiest to live with, not the cheapest, but definitely the one that leaves a mark when you ride it. So I just pulled over here, going to get a bite to eat, and I really like the way these panniers work. Oh hey, some bikers coming by. They're really simple. They open and close nice and easily. I would actually say that these panniers are probably the first time I've seen panniers that actually look good on a motorcycle. I actually think these panniers look really great. And yeah, just looking around, I always worry about wildlife when I'm stopped on the side of the road in places like this, because you've got bears and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, just getting a snack out of here and a few things. But just lost my glove. I'm going to put on a heated layer as well. So a little bit of snow on the road, and the temperatures are around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about, I think, I want to say 10 degrees Celsius. I could be wrong. But the heated grips that come standard on this bike have been really good, actually. I'm not wearing like heavy gloves. I'm wearing protective gloves. And I also wear this brand called Heat Gear, battery-operated heated vests and layers. Now, this Turismo also comes with 2 DIN sockets, one for the passenger and one for the rider. So you can just plug in your standard heat gear into that socket as well, which is really great. You don't have to add that on as an afterthought. I will say that if you're a fan of my content, that I am an affiliate partner with Revzilla. So I'll put a link below for some of the gear that I use that I bought from Revzilla. There's a brand called First Gear, which is really good. I'm actually wearing a Gerbing vest right now. And so I'll put a link in the description to the Heat Gear site on Revzilla. And if you're interested in buying something from them, do me a favor and click on the link, because it all helps me produce these videos. This is not my day job, I do this for fun, so it all helps. So yeah, look for that link in the description. So wow, check out the view on my right. In many ways, kind of Pacific Northwest version of the Alps. Just really beautiful, lightly covered in snow. I am descending down the east slope of the mountain, and this is where I think it's a good time to talk about brakes, especially brakes in colder conditions, going downhill, etc. So for a bike that claims to merge sort of sport bike DNA with touring capability, for me, how it slows matters just as much as how it accelerates. So on the Turismo Veloce Lusso, which I have here, you get a front braking setup that's clearly aimed at a sport bike performance, with sort of twin 320mm, I think, floating discs up front, with radially mounted 4-piston calipers from Brembo. And certainly some of the reviews that I've read, and I would concur, the front brakes deliver excellent feel, they're superb modulation, very strong power. And that's the kind of braking I think you'd expect coming off a super sport, you know, saying, yeah, I can carve these mountain roads hard and trust the stops. And the front end gives you the confidence to attack corners, to use sort of lake braking and still transition to the apex. And on a 500-mile ride like this, I've found that it's very comforting, especially when the route tightens and the elevation changes, like it's like what's happening right now. And you have to have a discipline to both throttle and lever. Now the rear brake, this is where I would say I'd throw a caution to the flag, because while the front is top tier, the rear doesn't receive the same level of praise in my mind. It's kind of more of a disappointment. I think compared with the front's sharpness and feel, the rear brake feels somewhat less refined to me. Perhaps a little less bite, less feedback under load, especially when the bike isn't fully settled. So, but in touring scenarios, when you're loaded with luggage like I am now, perhaps you're 2 up, you're running through twisties and sweeping roads, that rear brake doesn't inspire the same level of drama. But honestly, for my kind of ride, which tends to be solo, spirited and smooth, I don't think it's a deal breaker, because the front is doing almost all the heavy lifting, and that's where you want the precision. Now, the braking system is backed by ABS, and I believe an IMU based platform, so it utilizes that Bosch 9 Plus ABS that you'll find on a lot of bikes in this class, and that means you get corner aware anti-lock functionality and better bike stability under heavy braking, or when the road surfaces vary like they vary on a ride like this. You know, we started out with, you know, very cool roads in the morning, getting colder, and then leaf debris on the edges. So I think my takeaway in the braking is that if you come into this bike expecting touring bike styling, or sort of touring brake style braking, sort of that gentle, plush, forgiving, you might find the rear is a little sharper than you thought. But if you expect sport bike style stops and high performance equipment, then yeah, the bike delivers, particularly up front. And that aligns with the character of the bike. It's a middleweight tall rounder with that Italian sport soul. Now on this ride, you know, with the temperature dropping, the roads drying, and some fast sweepers in the mix, I found myself trusting the front brakes completely so far. And yeah, even I think when laden with a little gear and luggage for the day, I think the modulation so far has stayed pretty consistent. They feel remained pretty good so far from the lever. That's definitely added to my confidence, especially when pushing through some of these mountain roads and coming out of the corners. So yeah, front brake's excellent, sort of sport level performance. Rear brake adequate, reliable, but not super memorable. And I think the ABS and electronics are definitely modern and effective and where you would want. If I was to nitpick for full touring, I might wish the rear had a little bit more bike or feel when two up or fully loaded. But for what the Turismo is built to do, which is sort of spirited mountain rides like this, long tour days with the sport leaning, I think the brake package delivers really nicely. And considering how this bike surprised me on the ride so far, definitely more comfortable than I expected, more agile than I'd guessed it would be. The brakes are part of that. You know, it's a sort of a more capable than I thought type story, and they don't hold you back. And I think that's pretty good for a bike like this. So now that we've gotten over the main area of the North Cascade Highway, I thought it'd be useful to sort of give the bike a bit of a run on some of the more open, wide spaces out here in eastern Washington, where sort of the lush forests and the sort of damp switchbacks, all of that kind of falls behind me. And over here on the eastern side, it's dry, open, and quite expansive. So you start to feel the land breathe a little deeper, and you start to feel the motorcycle feel and breathe a little different also. Because what you've got here is sort of these wide valleys, these long straight stretches of highway, fewer trees, more sky, and this stretch from Lake Chelan through to Wenatchee sort of gives you that classic high desert vibe. You have these low rolling hills and bluffs in the distance, fewer towns, fewer turns. It's not technical riding at all. It's more endurance riding, so sort of mental, rhythmic, I suppose. And on the Turismo Veloce, it definitely reveals some strengths, but also a few quirks. So let's start with the wind protection. You see here I've got a windscreen. I mean, it's okay, not great, but okay. It's adjustable, the screen takes the edge off the wind blast. And at anything under 70, you're reasonably shielded at 70 miles an hour. But once you start cruising above 75 or 80 for long stretches, which let's be honest happens a lot out here, you'll start to feel some of the helmet buffeting and chest pressure. And just as a reminder, I am 32-inch inseam, 6 foot tall. It's not unbearable, but it definitely reminds me that it's not a cold wing. It's a sport bike in touring form, and the aerodynamics lean more aggressively. They're just generally more aggressive than plush. Now, let's talk about the cruise control. It works, it's not flashy, and it's certainly not the most intuitive. But once you're dialed in, it holds the speed and gives you your right wrist a bit of a break. Actually, on this ride, I used it more than I expected, just to zone in and let the miles tick by a little bit. And this is a 500 plus mile ride in a day. And so, especially in these open stretches of road east of Chelan, where the road unfurls for miles ahead and you see the windmills spinning in the distance, it's quite useful, but it is quite clunky. It feels quite dated, the cruise control. And if anything, sometimes I'm not sure if I completely trust it, in that when you engage it, it takes a while to set, and then to disengage, you actually have to press the button. For me anyway, it didn't roll off when I disengaged the throttle like a lot of cruise control systems do. So this is the part of the ride where I found myself actually reflecting on the bike the most, because when the riding gets less involved, I suppose your mind starts to wander a little bit, and you realize the Turismo may not be the most comfortable tourer on the market, but it sure does more than enough to keep you happy out here. The seat is still good, even after 300 plus miles so far. Throttle response is, continuing to be pretty smooth, and the gearing, for me, it's tall enough that the engine isn't screaming at highway speeds. And how about that triple? Well, it's still there when you want to drop 2 gears and make a pass, no problem. So, this side of the ride might not be as dramatic as the mountain twisties, but it's definitely real riding. In many ways, it reminds me of Montana. Sort of big skies, long miles, a bike that's honest about what it is. It's certainly not a touring couch, and it's not a large sort of ADV barge. It's just fast and capable, exotic, and it's just comfortable enough to get you through the lonely bits so far. So I hope you enjoyed that little tour on my MV Agusta, and I thought it'd be worth sort of closing now that I'm back in Seattle on sort of the high-level thoughts. This is an Italian design, beautiful, passionate kind of motorcycle. There's no other way to describe it. And it's no secret that I've always loved Italian motorcycles. Now, this one in particular, in terms of price, surprisingly, even though it's not cheap at $20,000 US, you can actually pick these up for less than that here. Like, I've seen them advertised for around $15,000 to $16,000 in the US anyway. So there seems to be a bit of a fire sale on them. And at that price, I think they're actually really good value. Undoubtedly, it's gorgeous. And yeah, it will tour. It's not sort of a high maintenance kind of, garage queen at all. This bike doesn't mind getting dirty. I haven't had any reliability issues with it. It's going in for its first service this week at 600 miles. The luggage is great. The handling is great. It really reminds me of some of the old, earlier versions of the Multistrada, which I talked a little bit about in the video. So I find myself wanting to put my foot down actually and kind of drag my foot around some corners. It's got this really playful feeling about it. The display is not perfect. The quick shifter can feel a bit clunky in the lower gears. The cruise control could be a lot better. Comfort, however, surprisingly good. I did 550 miles on my old 53-year-old body in the fall, and I was great. Felt really good, actually. In fact, it felt more comfortable than my Ninja 1100 SX, which is a really comfortable bike. And I'm a 32-inch inseam, 6 feet tall. Now, if you could only have one bike, I wouldn't choose this bike. Not because it isn't great, but because there are things about it that could be problematic. It has a 5-year warranty, but the dealer network's really sparse in the US. Now in Seattle, I'm lucky because I have 2 MV Agusta dealers here. And frankly, there are other sort of do-it-all bikes. For me, the Goldilocks bike in this category is still the Ducati Multistrada V2S. It does everything really, really well. And I think following very close on its heels now would probably be the Tracer 9 GT. And either of those bikes are going to be great. Now, I hear you say, what about the Triumph? I think the Triumph's fantastic also. I just happen to prefer a more sporty side of a sport tourer, and the Triumph tend to be more leaning towards the ADV side. Admittedly, the Triumph Tiger Sport is trying to change that, but I think it needs another generation or two before I'd be really interested in it, having ridden it. So that's it from me. Please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I hope you really enjoy this content. I really enjoy bringing it to you. I'll see you on the next one.